So we now come on to the other main option that black can play after e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, the most aggressive square for our bishop, and this is our recommendation here, attacking f7. And the other main move, apart from bishop c5, is knight to f6. So it's really important you know what to do against these two moves. And that's why we're starting off this course by analysing these two options. And this is something you're going to face without a shadow of a doubt, this knight to f6 move. Now, there are a number of ways to play, but clearly fitting into our Grandmaster gambits, play in the most aggressive way, but soundly, the only move that we can consider here is d4. Fits into our philosophy, striking in the center immediately. Now, in this case, castling first doesn't make as much sense, because if we castle in this position, black can actually take on e4. And this is actually quite good for black. It's not the Berlin, because we don't have a bishop on b5. And the problem with that is when black plays d5, he's going to gain a tempo attacking our bishop. So, for example, we try to break it up with d4 here, d5, and white has inadequate compensation. I mean, always look at what your opponent's last move is, and moving the knight here attacks our pawn. So we want to play d4 immediately here. This is our main suggestion. We don't need to castle. d4 straight away. And in we go. In we go, boys. Now, in this video, we're going to be looking at mainly the sidelines that black can play. So we're going to not be looking at the most critical continuations, but moves which black probably should avoid playing. Moves that should ensure us a really strong initiative or just a nice advantage. Let's get all the drosh out the way first, you know. Get rid of all the rubbish, then we can get through to the critical stuff. In this case, we're going to do that. Now here, again, there are a number of options, and this move against unprepared opponent can really confuse them. And e takes d4 is clearly the best move. I mean, black must really do something in the center, right? Because we're with the move d4, we're making the game critical immediately. And again, that's one of the ideas I wanted to get into this course. I didn't want to, drag the game on for a long time. And I think this is why this course, obviously I've done a number of courses and I played different openings now. But one thing I wanted to do here, after working with Richard Palliser, who's a brilliant person to work with, I have to say, is the English, Bovenet English, great opening, but it's very different to this course. The English is a nice lifetime sort of opening of grinding away positional maneuvers. This is the opposite in some respects. Everything is sound, but it's immediately going for the kill. We're not hanging about. If we can gambit, we will. If we can attack, we will. And d4 must be correct. So, well, first of all, before we move on to e takes d4, and we look at some of the sidelines here, what happens if black grabs the other pawn with knight takes e4, which is occasionally seen, but it's just a bad move. In this case, we're not going to castle, which would allow d5, but we have a much stronger option. It's a very greedy move here. And a much stronger option is simply taking on e5. And already white is just better. And this is why we went d4 rather than castling. That extra tempo, very useful. We're already threatening queen to d5, just winning a piece without any hassle. In some cases, we can swap the move order around, take on f7, and then play queen d5, winning a pawn, misplacing black's king. And this is, black's gone wrong here. This is something you'll never see at the higher levels, black playing knight takes e4. And yeah, you don't need to do heroics in these lines. Often the simplest move is correct. We're playing aggressive, but it doesn't mean we have to go crazy, right? We're going crazy, aggressive crazy, but in actually a way that, let's say, Macau Tao would be proud of us in playing. Morphy is our other inspiration. We're bringing Morphy back from the New Orleans grave. I hear there's a lot of vampires over there, actually, if you believe in that kind of thing. To, you know, he'd love this court style warfare. He'd be like, yeah, I'm playing this. And now it's not really clear what black should do. I mean, you know, we'll just have a look at two moves. D6 was once actually played against Garry Kasparov in a simultaneous. And this is maybe the trickiest move because it looks very natural to play Queen D5, which may well be winning on the spot. But in actual fact, this is actually a mistake here. And Garry even played Queen D5. And I like Richard Palace's comments here in his written comments. Garry played Queen D5 in a simul, but his opponent was no Muppet. I think Muppet's a very English sort of word. My brother used to call me a Muppet a lot. I think it's quite endearing. It's an endearing way to say someone's lovably stupid. Is that right? I hope so. Otherwise, I'll have to be having words with my older brother. And the problem with this move straight away is actually bishop e6 and d5. And suddenly black's tricked us. But this is one of those small tactics where we mentioned before, you just swap the move order around. And if we just take on f7 first, this is much better. And now queen d5. And we're going to get a very nice game here. I think that's clear to see. Let's say bishop e6. We take that one. Black tries to develop. We don't need to do heroics here. Black's king is weak. Develop. And now, after d takes e5, this looks pretty good for white. I wouldn't even grab this pawn straight away. I would be more keen on going bishop e3. It's not going to run away here. And rook d1. This pawn's not going to last. And this, I feel, gives us great play, with even knight d5 coming. The problem black has here, he'd like to go rook f8 and king g8. If he can play those two moves, he's okay. But moving the rook here always allows queen takes h7. So it's not easy for black to get his king safe. So after d6, bishop f7, queen d5 check. King e8's also being tried when we take here. And now d5 is a way to try and keep it closed. D takes e5. Again, I think the only thing to remember here is you don't need to be in a rush to take this one. Because if we take here immediately, we actually allow queen to d4. When black may have equalizing chances. So better to play knight c3 first. Again, this is a gambit's course. We don't need to grab the first pawn, panic, grab the first pawn back unless it's a good move to do. You know, don't be in a rush. And after knight c3, let's say bishop d6, bishop e3. We're going to castle. Okay, we're not grabbing the pawn back here. It'd be going a pawn up. But I mean, this is just playing away. I mean, I always generally, if there's a pawn which I can grab, which allows my opponent counterplay, not even in this course, in any position, or there's a way where I don't grab a pawn, but I keep the pressure on my opponent, 99% of the time, I'm going to keep the pressure on. I'm only going to grab a pawn if I think it doesn't give my opponent much in return, and and I don't have another option. So I think that's well worth bearing in mind here as well. But if d5 going back, well, our queen can just slip to f4. We are a pawn up here. And after castles, well, rook f8, queen g3. And this actually happened in the German league. Gapanenko versus Minovic. So strong players still play this. And we're a pawn up with the compensation again. It's, you know, quite pleasant, right? So if we go back to this move of knight takes d4, knight takes e4, we just simply take on here because we give our queen the way in. Now, knight c5 has been attempted. And now just simple development. I mean, because if we try anything on f7, knight e6 is a square that knight's heading for. So let's just develop knight c3. And this leaves us with better development, as in Regan Lean in 1977. Black's very cramped here, right? He's got to play knight e6 at some point. And we could castle, but let's remember what black's going to try to play. He's going to try to play here and take with a bishop. So I like this knight e4 move that was played. This move, again, we're always trying to cause our opponent the most problems we can. Castling is natural, but a little bit lazy. Moving a knight here is being more observant of what the position demands, what our opponent is trying to do. He has to really play d5. Well, he's got to try to play d5, otherwise he's just going to be too cramped. That is his one break. So if we work against that move, let's say he does it now, well, minimum, we're going to just have a nice position by taking here and causing structural damage to bishops. So this knight e4 is being very observant to the demands of the position. And after something like bishop e7, well, let's just keep it simple. We can now castle, black castles, and just put our pieces on good squares. The rook on e1 makes sense, just over defending that file. And black's got to play d6 at some point. I don't see what else he can do. And when we do this, we're going to just be playing against this pawn. Something like c3 is a simple move. Black is cramped, and we might even bring the bishop to c2, the queen to d3, and go for h7. Another idea, another way you can play the structure, if you think about where to put your pieces, is this knight may look good, but it's not actually doing a great deal. You might even want to try to get that into f5. f5, great square for the knight. I wouldn't be worried about our bishop on c1. I mean, there's no point just moving it to d2 because you think you have to develop it. That, again, is a lazy move, bishop d2. It's the kind of move, again, I don't think you see a top player playing. Because, okay, or even e3, you're trying to develop the piece, but what are you actually doing? You're not really doing much with that bishop. Development is obviously important, but only when you have a reason. And I think we can wait with that bishop. We can wait with that bishop. It might have better ways to get into the game, like zooming over to h6 even for the attack. So after d4, let's go back, knight f6, d4. Really, black's hand is pretty much forced here. He's got to take on d4. And this happens nearly all the time. And here we're going to just now castle because we have got our d4 move in. We're going to castle. And this is where black has a number of options. Now, the main move, I think it's fair to say, is, well, there's two main moves. Number one, bishop c5, which we're going to analyze a little bit later because it's more theoretical. You're more likely to get this. We're going through the sidelines here first. A nice developing move. And we're going to answer with e5 here. Now, you might notice a transposition here. And can you work out another move order you can get to this position? Which we've mentioned quite a lot already, but it's really worth being aware of transpositions. And the transposition is, if black plays, we're concentrating on knight f6 mainly here, but let's be aware, if black goes bishop c5, and now we castle, this is where we castle because there's no threat against e4, and after this we now go here, and if black takes with a pawn, transposition. This is how we can get into this structure. But our move order, of course, is d4, and I go through the move order a couple of times so you get used to it. Castles, and bishop c5 looked at a little bit later. And the other main move is, of course, just taking the bull by the horns and playing knight takes e4. This is the move that myself and Blair analysed for our course and suggested that black plays the last course we did on playing e5 in a very dynamic way. We suggested going for knight takes e4 here. So this is also covered a little bit later on because these two moves are main moves. So what else can black play apart from these main moves? Well, the thing is, if black starts playing passively, which I feel, a lot of players will do, especially at lower levels. So when I mean passively, they start playing something like d6. d6 is just trying to hold that pawn up. Or let's say bishop e7. We're going to get great play. Let's have a look at them first. And then we'll come to d5, which is the other option. So that's what we're covering here. We're covering d6. We're covering d5. We're covering bishops e7. None of these moves are worth worrying about. Let's start with bishop e7. Bishop e7. Modest development. And here, well, actually, e5 is a very tempting choice. And this is something which you can just play. And, be very happy in. With now what knight e4 being black's only try, and bishop d5. I mean, we don't need to look at bishop e7 too much. This is one suggestion. Now, there is another move, actually, which is just simpler, and it might even be a little bit stronger than e5. e5 is better for white, but, you know, in some cases, simple is good, yeah? And the simple move of just taking that pawn back means we're going to have an ongoing advantage. So this is actually our main recommendation here. I mean, if black doesn't take on e4, well, we've just got a very pleasant position because black's bishop is very bad. And we got knight f5 coming. We got knight c3 coming. A nice space advantage and a nice initiative and better minor pieces. You might even want to play f4 later on, going for an attack over there. So let's just have a look at this idea of black trying knight takes e4. And this is one of the reasons myself and Richard put this a little bit over e5. Both good moves. It's just because it gives black the temptation to take here. And now, knight to f5. And we wanted to just put this line in because we thought like black might be tempted to take here. Knight f5 is another way you can gambit and gain a very strong initiative. And this is really tricky. We mentioned this square for the knight earlier, right? The knight on this square, very nicely placed. And now let's say black castles, and this is the most common move. Of course, black wants to get the king safe, but now we just flick the queen in, and this is the idea of this mini gambit. And in practice, actually, over the board, black hasn't really ever found a good defense here. There is one way that black can keep in the game, but it's not easy to find. I wonder if you can spot it. Before we come to the one way you can keep in the game, let's just have a look at the other options. Well, g6 is not that way because we can check first and just take on e4. And after bishop g5, maybe this is black's clever idea. Clever, I say, with the idea knight g4, f5. Black might be all right, but we're not going to go backwards. We're playing like Morphy. We don't go back unless we have to. And knight takes f7 is clearly just winning. When we can take on f7, if the king takes, there's queen d5 check, winning the bishop. So bishop takes c1. And after knight c3 here, well, we're just winning. We're exchange up with the attack, with the better king, with the better pawn structure, with the better rooks. I mean, come on, better development. That's what we want. So g6 is not the move to try and defend. And the same can be said for knight to g5. This is actually the most commonly played try from black in this position, but it also fails. And this one fails to just knight takes e7 and bishop takes g5. Peace. So another move that black's tried is bishop f6. And this case, there's a lot of tempting moves here, in actual fact. Taking the knight can't be too bad, but there's also knight h6, and knight takes f7. And we win the exchange. I mean, there's a lot of good moves there, right? So the only try, really, is bishop g5. If black insists on playing this dubious line, he's got to find this move. And the point of this is a little bit like in that last one with a bishop on f6. If we took the knight, when we take the knight here, black has d5, which he's got to play, otherwise it's piece down. And now after bishop takes d5, he has to try this. Bishop takes f5 and knight e7. And he's trying to win the piece back. This is the only way black can stay in the game. But now we can flick in bishop takes f7 and just queen c5. And we're a pawn to the good here. Keeping a good defense on that. Our knight's coming out. Black certainly doesn't have enough compensation for a pawn in this position. And just to go over, actually, if we go back here, the same thing, if bishop f6, the reason we want to check on h6 rather than taking the knight is if we take the knight, that d5 tactic, always watch out for d5. d5 is always a break that black is eager to play. And this is why we don't take, well, we can take knight, but it's, again, maybe not the best line because of this knight e7. So hence why I just remember to go knight h6 check. But of course, all these lines are bad for black if we know what to do. So castling queen g4, bad. Now, d5 is another bad move, but it's actually very tempting for black to play this because it's normally the move black wants to play, as we've seen. So what do we do here? Well, here we just take on g7. And after king f8, we now have bishop h6. And this is a kind of pattern that sometimes occurs. I've had this in a couple of games myself. And the big threat now is knight e6 check. So the king has to move. And now just bishop takes d5. The knight should come back to f6. And now this, again, simplest route to a big advantage is fine for us. You know, we don't want to allow knight g4 and get our knight trapped. So here we should take on c6. We're a pawn up. We don't need heroics. Okay, black should swap the queens off. And now b takes c6 is key. If knight g4 here, there's actually a very nice idea. Knight to e8. And we got ideas of bishop g7, winning exchange this way, of taking there. This is very nice. We're also a pawn up already. So let's have a look. B takes c6, and now just h3. And as long as we take the sting out of that move, it's very hard for black to get these pieces out. And we're also going for one of my favorite maneuvers. If you watch my stuff, you'll know about this rook coming around to g3, the rook swinger. For example, now bishop f8 may be the only way to try, but now we have the other way in. And this bishop f8 is to stop us swinging. Bishop b7, and now we can take this one and just come back to f5 with a healthy extra pawn and a better pawn structure. Can't be too shabby. So let's go back. Knight f6, d4, and now e takes best, and here we castle, and we just had a look at what happens if bishop e7. Well, we can play e5, but knight takes d4 is even stronger because after here we got knight f5. And now we've seen that d5 and castles are both bad. The best try is bishop f6. When black can just about hang on, but we're still going to be a safe pawn up after quite a forcing sequence. Now, bishop takes here is okay, but the problem is when you come and take the knight, d5 occurs. Watch out for d5. So I prefer queen d5 in this position, forcing the pace. And this knight now can't move. It would like to come to d6, but it can't. So black has to castle. And now we have this d5 move. Actually, we are transposing to that other bishop f6 line, aren't we? Quite weird transposition. And let's have a look. So we take here, and now knight e7. But always in these positions. I mean, I was saying in the other line we take on f7 is more material, but even this line's good, isn't it? All these lines are just too good. Because again, in these lines, we just take on f7 always, right? And we move our queen, and we're a safe pawn up. Easy development. So actually, all these lines are very good, right? And actually, I mean, in this line, I'd probably prefer to bring the knight to f3, but it's a pawn. Okay, so knight f6 is a bit challenging when you have too many good moves. makes life difficult. d4, and now e takes d4. So bishop castles, bishop e7 covered. So let's look at what happens if the d pawn moves. Well, d6 is a solid-ish option. I say solid-ish. But now after knight takes d4, bishop e7, we get the same kind of thing we just looked at. Meaning that after bishop e7, had we taken here, if black doesn't go for grabbing the pawn on e4, he's going to have to play d6 at some point. So we now transpose into those lines, and we can have a look how they work. So let's go to it. So castles, now d6. Now we do take the pawn, bishop e7, and knight to c3. And this is just, again, I don't think we need to spend a lot of time on this position. It's a very pleasant position to play. And we are just going to develop in a normal way. We've seen this kind of thing already. With more space, black's position is very cramped. I would be playing bishop to one of these two squares. If I go to f4, eventually I want to come to g3 and go f4, pawn to f4. And I'm just going to put my pieces on good natural squares. Queen d2, bring my rook into the center. At some point, I might use d5. And it's a kind of position where white's just slightly better. You need it, you need to just centralize your pieces, stop the move d5, as that's black's only break. So always keep an eye on that. But our pieces are well positioned to stop that. So we don't need to panic at all about that. If black can't play d5, black really can't find a plan here. I wouldn't even be in a rush to take that knight. I know it doubles black's pawns, but it does give black some play along the b file. You can take there, but I don't see why, because we're not worried about black taking our knight, because our queen centralizes. So here it's really centralization, rooks to the center, and then in the middle game, when you've developed all your pieces, got all your pieces to the best squares, we can start an attack with f4, and then at the right moment, e5, or even f5 sometimes occurs. So you've got all these ideas, and black just has to sit there, really. So d6, certainly not worrying. And that leaves d5 here. But this is far too ambitious. I mean, you sometimes see this, but it's such an ambitious move to play. Because look at the kings. Should you really be opening your own king position with such a move? No. And here we can just simply take here when, of course, we want to take. There's no reason to do anything else. We want to open up the enemy king. And the point being now, if knight takes d5, which was the only way to remain a pawn up, we now go for that fried liver game. You know the fried liver? I'm sure most of you know the fried liver. And we now, well, we're playing aggressively. The check is okay, but it does, we are helping black develop. Black wants to play bishop e7 and castles, then he might be okay. So this one is even stronger than recapturing on d4. Recapturing on d4, slight advantage, but this is much more going for the throat. And this actually now has the huge threat. We're not even going to take on f7 like the flying liver. We can, but queen f3 immediately is just a ginormous threat. We don't even have to sack material to get a winning position. And there's really not much that black can do here. I mean, it's very tricky. I mean, if h6, well, in this line, we might well take there and go queen f3, like the fried liver. And here we have a number of options. Check here, and I'll let you work out which way you want to play it. Yes, I know you're a piece down, but this is tremendous. Something like bishop here, I mean, wins the piece back immediately. Simple developing move there. So bishop e6 maybe is the only move which might attract black to this line, thinking he's defending everything. But now we just play rook e1, and that bishop now is basically irrelevant because it's still pinned. And unsurprisingly, this position has scored 80% in practical games for white. Black's best try, there's horrible things happening here, queen coming in, is queen d7, when, again, we've got to be a little bit accurate, because whenever your opponent is a move or two away from consolidating, like black is here, if black castles queenside, he may be consolidating. That's when you've really got to be more aware of tactical opportunities. And here, if we played some quiet move, he'd castle. So if we take here, we can take, but there is a tactic, and that tactic is knight takes f7. And this is just incredibly strong. This can be taken either by the queen or by the king. So if queen takes f7, we just take on d5. And we can probably stop here. I think you can see we're not even material down. And, well, okay, one more move, knight d8 to defend. And now I just go bishop g5, trying to get rid of the knight, attacking the bishop. And, yeah, black can resign. So king takes is maybe better, but now we have this queen f3 check again. And there's not really a good move for black here. Not a good place to put his king. So let's say, I don't know what we can suggest here. I mean, the knight can't come back. Let's just make that clear because we win everything with that move. If the king goes to g8, can you see the winning move here? And again, we're looking for attacking, aggressive moves. This has occurred in a couple of games. Very simply, rook takes e6. And this one's dropping. And this is just a crushing position. Black has to try and defend the knight. But now there's actually very clever, just queen e4, keeping control on the rook. The knight can't move. And black is actually, I mean, he's not material down, but he can't really move anything. And he can't stop us in this position, bringing our knight just simply into the game. He's completely paralyzed. Winning. And after queen f3, the other idea is to step forwards. Yeah. But now I like continuation of the attack, this one. And this is beautiful, actually, because we want to play bishop d3 check, right? Because the king doesn't even have any squares to move. But this defends for black. So we just got to get rid of that defensive move. And by taking on e6, we can now play bishop d3. And it's going to be mate. Next move. I got that right. So let's just go over this line. I mean, there are some other moves. So in knight f6, we're playing d4 immediately. Why do we play d4 immediately? Because if we castle, black might be able to take that pawn. But he can't take the pawn now because we take on e5. And when we take on e5, we have various ideas based on the d5 square. Queen coming in here or taking on f7 first. So he's got to take on d4. And now it's time for castle, just to see what black's going to play. Now, bishop e7, we have e5 or our other idea, knight takes d4. D6, we just simply take on d4 and we have a nice edge. And d5 is far too ambitious because we open up the position. And if the knight takes here, knight to this square is just crushing. That's what other things can do. Well, knight a5 is actually losing on the spot. This is an idea that black plays in some other variations, but not when we've got such great development. Can you see an immediate way to win a piece here? And it's funny, it's to do with the e1 square. And this is actually, queen e1 claimed 12 victims in our database, which we've used to prepare this. And this just seems to win. And remember to just, you've got, these lines, you always examine your checks and captures, right? And you've got to, loose pieces drop. And we're just going to pick that knight up. So the only other thing that can be tried is knight b4. Maybe even the best move, but it's not inspiring after bishop b3. Why bishop b3? You might be thinking, well, it's just a very useful move to play to secure our c2 square from any tactics like this. And we want to take on d4 with our queen because it's a nice. We don't really want to take the knight here. Let's get the queen in to clear up the first rank. But of course, if we take here now, does knight take c2? But after we play just simply bishop b3, this might be quite a hard move to find, but I also think it's quite logical. We're going to be taking here with the queen. I mean, here we'll run into check and the bishop or king has to move. And if black tries to win this pawn like this, then queen takes d4. And this leaves us with a tremendous initiative. Black now has to try castling. And we can't, unfortunately, wholeheartedly attack the king now. But we can go rook d1 and pressurize on the d file. Bishop e6, and now we've got to think of ways to sort of break this chain of defense down. And now knight to g5. And we're going to get a very pleasant exchange on e6, two bishops, pin going on, and a very favorable game here. So really, I think that's most of the sidelines after knight f6, d4 that you need to know. So we looked at knight takes e4. After the capture here, castles, well, bishop e7. We quite like the move knight d4 here. Very simple, and it gives us, it continues our gambit style, aggressive move. e5 also good. If the d pawn moves, well, if it goes there again, we're taking. If it moves 2 square, even better, we just take it immediately. So none of these lines are even that taxing on us, I don't think. It's not like even if we don't play the best move, we're going to be worse. If we don't play the best move, we're probably still better. But if we do play the best move, black is going to be crying. So we're now in the next couple of videos, after the move d4, captures, castles. We're going to look at the critical moves here. And the critical moves, and what any self-respected, well-prepared black player will play, is either knight takes e4, and after this move, we're analysing rook e1. we had a look at this in the model games at the start, so hopefully you have an idea what to do. And the other idea is bishop c5 when we're analyzing e5. And we've already touched upon these ideas in those model games, but we're going to get into the heavy theory of them. And then you're basically done for this e4, e5 stuff, which you'll get a lot. You're going to have some pretty awesome weapons to unleash.